Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Arna Sahu, host of Arna's News, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. Today on episode 46.
Just because something feels difficult or you think you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. When I had that realization, it was around the time that I had just moved to engineering management, and there was no easy way for me to track whether I had a fruitful day or whether I had a successful day, because I was now going from taking a look at all the user stories and the code check-ins that I did to now being in meetings where we were discussing plans and proposals and architectural designs, but there's no easy way to measure what you did all day. You felt super busy, but you didn't know what you did all day. And then you see the fruits of your effort in terms of people management. It takes so long before you actually see it.
Today, on episode 46, I'm pleased to announce our guest, Sukrutha Bhadouria. As a director of engineering at Salesforce and also the chief technology officer at Girl Geek X, a community of over 20,000 women in tech, these women are excited to learn about new technology, connect with other women in technology, and she also wants to change the world for girls and is passionate about tech, gender diversity, and engineering leadership. Previously named in Business Insider's list of 30 most important women under 30 in tech in 2014, and San Francisco Business Times 40 under 40 tech titans in 2016, here is Sukrutha. So thank you so much for being here, Sukrutha. Before we dive into the questions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Arna. It's hard to describe oneself, right? It's always easier when you're describing someone else, but basically, I think I'm someone who is curious, creative, and I feel like I'm always trying to be the best version of myself. And that manifests in different ways, depending on what I'm doing. Literally, it could be anything. And I feel like my attitude towards competition, while it is different, I don't compete with anybody else. I don't have jealousy with anyone else. I'm totally okay not being as ambitious or as hardworking as somebody else, but I feel like I try to be as hardworking as I can be and as ambitious as I can be. So it's really me competing with me. Every day I have to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday.
Yeah, and my next question for you is tell us a bit about your career path.
Yeah, so my career path, I always, I was sort of like the straight arrow person. I thought technology always fascinated me. It was very, very interesting to me. I also in schools really enjoyed math, physics, biology. And I think the reality is that I tricked myself into really enjoying it. It's almost like I decided I was going to enjoy it. Um, and so whenever I've had that sort of attitude, I've really, really enjoyed things, and I've really done well in it. And I didn't realize that I had convinced myself I was going to be good at it. And I think I had convinced myself that I was going to enjoy it and be good at it was because my father's a doctor, and I thought naturally I have to enjoy biology. And my mother, is spent most of her career as a math teacher and really enjoyed physics when she was in school and college. And I thought naturally I have to be really, really good at that as well. And I think it's things like that that led me to believe that engineering was my next path. And I was very specific that I wanted to study something in the electrical field. But as I started doing that, the way in which I did electrical engineering, both for college and for my master's, was I started to take these coding classes that was, the old school coding that you did with microcontrollers and chips and chip design. And as I was in grad school, I started to really enjoy the whole coding aspect. And I ended up going more, somehow, it sort of naturally happened that I spent a little bit more time in the software side, because as a job, that's something I was more inclined towards doing. And then because I don't have the traditional computer science degree, it was a bit of a hurdle, I would say. Even though my mindset was there, I was trained to think like how one should when they're coding, but the basic concepts I definitely lacked. So I had to work overtime to fill those gaps. And there were times that I felt definitely like it wasn't for me, because I would see other people finding it a lot easier. And it took me a while to get back into that mindset where I had to trick myself into thinking, I'm really going to be good at this and I'm really going to enjoy it. And, it's like your head says one thing and your body follows. I think it took about, I want to say it was like around 5 years of me working. And I was just, I think, slowly starting to coast. Um, and I switched over to having this mindset that I really want to be motivated. And I hadn't achieved, like, I think I had decided that my goalpost was to complete grad school and get a job. And I had this realization that you have to keep moving your goalpost. And throughout my career, even at Salesforce, I realized that I had to keep moving the goalpost, and I had to, notice these signs where I start to feel comfortable and throw myself into an environment where I um, don't feel comfortable anymore, which is what led me to move to management from an engineering IC role. I decided to be an engineering manager. And someone actually told me this one time that sticks with me. He said, just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing, because I would keep saying, I'm struggling, I'm struggling. And every time I would think I was struggling, that's when I would start to feel defeated. And I remember that quote so well for literally everything I do. I grew in Salesforce. Like you said, I'm a director of engineering now. I manage teams across the US and India. Uh, it's really cool, actually, for me to be in this position, because growing up, this is what I thought was such an amazing position to be in, be able to manage people across different time zones. I have 3 senior managers under me and a total of like 5, what they're called feature teams or scrum teams. I right now manage all aspects of the Salesforce low code offering, um, which is for custom pages and custom components. And that's really, really interesting to me, that one can customize pages and components and apps, just without using code, just by using drag and drop. And I'm really lucky and happy to be in this position. Every day I learn something new, for sure, whether it's about myself or if it's about work. But yeah, this is where I am.
That's so exciting. I really like how you were able to trick your mind when you were struggling at times, because that's what I do sometimes. So it's nice to find someone else that does it too. And I like how you always try to learn something every single day, even though you said you were struggling, but you didn't take it as a failure. So it's that type of mindset that comes in. Yeah, I think that's really cool. So my next question for you is, what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
Um, that's a bit of a tough one, because I think I struggle with giving advice when someone says to me that they want to follow a similar path. I think that everyone's journey has to be very, very unique to them. It's almost like your own snowflake and your own blueprint. But I'll give general advice where I'll say, take risks, but take every risk, turn every risk to be a calculated one. And your career is going to span, what, 30 something years, right? So even if you were to pivot and you are starting at what feels like a more junior position, What's the worst thing that'll happen? You lose a few months, you lose a year. I don't even know if it's called losing. And I definitely think you have to keep evaluating if you're starting to feel comfortable, and the best position or the best direction change to take now is literally a direction change, whether it's a lateral move or even if it feels like uh, on paper a step down. I think do it, because your career is going to be so long. You can't spend years of your life doing a job or doing a role or working at a company or working with people if you're not fully happy. So take those risks.
Yeah, I think that's really important because when you're in a career, a lot of people think that it's very, very risky to move out and do what you're actually passionate about. But as you said before, it's not worth to just stay there and be miserable. So even though you're at a junior position, although you may lose a few months or maybe even years, um, at least you'll be happy with what you're doing and you'll at least have a chance at doing what you truly enjoy. Okay,
Yeah.
and my next question for you is what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
Uh, um, a myth about my profession generally is, I think that people are debunking. It doesn't need to be just me. People think that one needs to be an expert in something in order to do it well. Specifically, this comes into play when we're talking about coding and software programming and engineering management. You don't need to be the best in the room. You don't need to be the expert in the room. You need to know how to look around you and get the best out of everybody around you, and then, implement it the way you see fit. Listen to everybody, but do your own thing, is what I would say. Everyone thinks that, okay, I'm only like a back end engineer. I can't do any full stack front end work. You don't have to be the best at it. You know, you're doing your best. That's most important.
Yeah, you don't have to be the smartest in the room. As a student, I think that's really similar because I would always think that in order to solve this problem, I have to be the smartest, and if I'm not, then I have to figure out what I'm lacking in. But it's okay to know that there are other perspectives in that room, and you might not always be right, but it's something that you can learn from other people, and you wouldn't probably learn it if you were on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my next question for you is if you could step into my shoes or your younger self, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
But if I would rewind back to me when I was in the same at the same stage as you, I definitely didn't realize the connection with the fact that, specifically with me, if I don't if I don't think I'm doing a good job at something, I automatically assume I'm not enjoying it. I'm not, I've realized my gaps in me very, very, like, what feels like sort of later in my life, which I wish I had realized earlier. Like, for example, I don't have the patience, it seems like, naturally to let myself get better at things over time, even if I don't see results right away. And I think I wish I had asked myself, like, why is it that you really think you're not good at this? Or why is it that you really think you're not enjoying this? And maybe had I done a little bit more digging and soul searching with these very specific questions that I do ask myself now, I would have taken more risks and made more bold choices along the way.
Yeah, I think introspection is also very important. As you said, digging in, finding your gaps, that can really help you in the long run figure out what you actually like and some soul searching.
Yeah.
And what are the best resources slash books that have helped you find your career path?
There would have been a time when I would have told you I listen to all these podcasts and I read a lot of books, which I still do. But I do find that the one thing that has really truly helped me is just keeping my ears open and eyes open and knowing what everybody's talking about, what everybody's listening to. I ask people so many questions when I meet them, that it really helps me right now, for example, I need to focus a lot more on being an effective leader, being able to build scaled teams, being able to build efficient teams, being able to grow efficient teams, being able to identify good talent, high potential talent. And I read a lot of articles published by Harvard Business Review. I listen to a lot of podcasts, like Reid Hoffman has some podcasts, I listen to his. Um, and I listen to a lot of the news that Kara Swisher puts out. But like I said, talking to people, hearing more from everybody around me and asking them specific questions like, what is it that you're listening to these days? Instead of what show are you watching, which is what used to be my question, I ask them what they're listening to, what they're reading.
I really like the way that you said keep your ears and eyes open, because a lot of knowledge, it might be controversial, but a lot of new knowledge comes from actual people instead of physical like articles. But learning from other people's experiences and their thoughts and stories can help you actually figure out some of that soul searching, as I said before.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think is a vital factor that shaped your career? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
I did touch upon this, right? I think there were a few things that still like come back to me. Um, One is the one where I said that, just because something feels difficult or you think you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. When I had that realization, it was around the time that I had just moved to engineering management, and there was no easy way for me to track whether I had a fruitful day or whether I had a successful day, because I was now going from taking a look at all the user stories and the code check-ins that I did to now being in meetings where we were discussing plans and proposals and architectural designs, but there's no easy way to measure what you did all day. You felt super busy, but you didn't know what you did all day. And then you see the fruits of your effort in terms of people management. It takes so long before you actually see it. So things like that come to mind. The other one that I was at a Girl Geek dinner that Microsoft sponsored, and the speakers were all women who worked on Skype. And one of them said that at some point in your career, you need to focus more on strengthening your strengths as opposed to spending that energy on filling your gaps or improving your weaknesses. That really, really made a change in my mindset on where I wanted to spend my time. Um, Another one was from the book The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And I paraphrase, but basically, the amount of energy and thought that you spend thinking about the problem, if you use that energy and thought towards thinking up solutions, you'll be better off. Um, and I think finally, this is like strange, but I learned this when I had my daughter, who's now 3. This is something both my husband and I learned. It was every day it's a new your daughter, every day she's a new baby, and what it means is what you think didn't go well today, that's fine. Tomorrow is a new day, and what went well today may not go well tomorrow. What didn't go well today is definitely going to go well tomorrow. So stuff like that, it helped me feel hopeful for the future, especially even if the future meant tomorrow, especially because, like I told you, I have noticed in myself that I don't give myself the room, and I'm not very patient with myself when I don't see results right away. So, and the one shock to my system, because I seem to need so much control over everything and the timelines of the outcomes, the one shock to my system was really when I was pregnant, with every test result I had to do for my during my pregnancy, and even after, like, you have zero control over anything, and it really was a shock to my system. And I think it really put things in perspective for me, and I really do think, had I heard this advice or learned this before, it would have helped me along with my career. It definitely helps my husband as well. And finally, I want to say one last thing. I used to always be very, very stressed about finishing my work, and we haven't met a deadline, or we're looking like we're off track already. And there was this very senior exec at Salesforce, and she said, it's a big company. Tomorrow's a new day. What you can't complete today, you can complete tomorrow. The sky isn't going to fall. So, these sort of things have really, been at pivotal moments in my career where I felt like, wow, I'm going to change my approach completely, including, like I told you, during my pregnancy and my maternity leave. The person I came back as after my maternity leave, with armed with all these like self-help resources, is interesting how I apply that at work.
Yeah. I really like the way that you said about the strengths. It's you're supposed to, or you should improve on your strengths rather than your weaknesses. I think that's a really good quote because a lot of people, including myself, I think that I should always fix on my weaknesses so I can average everything out to be good. But in the long run, if you try to perfect your strengths, then that can actually be a higher average than what you originally planned of. And I think that's really important. And also with the last one about the clean slate thing, I'm also someone who really cares about deadlines. And if I can't meet those, then I start to get really panicky. But just knowing that there's always a tomorrow and you can just start off from fresh, that's like very therapeutic and relieving. And just knowing that is just so helpful.
Yeah.
And what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career path?
There's so many things. I've touched upon a few, but I think mainly I didn't realize that your career is actually a team sport. It's you in the race, but just like any other individual sport, it involves so many people around you. It involves the kind of manager you have, it includes the peers you have, it includes your mental strength in the moment and during the process, it includes everybody around you in your personal life. um, all the choices you make in your personal life does have an impact on your career. And I wish I knew all of these things, that it's a combination of all these things that actually have an effect on what your career, not so much ladder, but like it's this windy slide that's going in various directions, right? Your career. So I wish I'd known that for sure.
Yeah, I think I have a really good analogy for this. But it's like you're running on like a chariot or like a horse or something. And the rope, you need the wheels, you need the actual chariot itself, you need all these different things to be in that race. And it's just not you, but there's so many other things around you that can help you win that race, quote unquote. And I think that's something that you should keep in mind, that whether it's at work or it's at school or any type of workspace, you're not alone necessarily. You might think you are, but you really aren't. There's going to be someone else around you that's going to help you. And you should just keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is a great segue to my next question, which is how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
I think it comes back to how, like, what is it that you're trying to do? What's the long game here? Um, and what do you want to be known for? Based on that, you can work backwards and come up with what you think should be your milestones, what should be success metric associated with the milestones, and generally, what does success mean to you? Actually, it's so interesting. I was co-organizing a bachelorette party for a friend, and this other person I was working with, she said we were about to all meet and talk about, what's our plan for the bachelorette party. And then she asked me, because I was trying to get everybody together, and she said, what does success mean to you for this meeting? And I was like, that's such a weird thing. It's like a freaking bachelorette party. The success is that it happens and it's fun and it's somewhat memorable. That's all there is to it. But then she's like, wait, but decisions need to be made. We need dates. We need like everybody to align on what needs to happen. And there's so many things. And then she said that's what she applies to her work with literally every meeting. she'll think before she goes in, what does success mean to her? And that helps her go prepared for every meeting. And that meeting could be literally just a conversation versus a scheduled meeting versus a recurring meeting. And yeah, I mean, it was like eye-opening, honestly. That sort of mindset.
I think that's really eye-opening too, because normally whenever I go into like meetings or things like that, I'm just like, okay, let's just make this be over. But instead, going in with that similar mindset of what can I get out of this, or what does success mean to me from whatever this is, that can actually help me build up that confidence of, oh, I actually learned something versus, oh, I just want this to be over. So having a different alteration to your attitude and mindset can help you be more successful in the long run.
Yep.
And my last question for you is, do you have any quotes or mottos that you love to follow and would like to share?
I think the first thing that came back to mind was something my coach would say. Okay, so I grew up doing competitive swimming, and after a point, same thing, like I felt like I wasn't doing as well as what was expected of me, and I slowly started to enjoy it less and less. But I look back very fondly on the time, because of all that I learned and the friends that I made. Um, and these like gems that my coach would drop that have served me through my life. And I wonder if that's why competitive athletes, endurance athletes, are just able to end up being successful in anything that they do after that, because they have all the tools to just keep their mind strong and focus on the real goals, whatever those goals might be. And success is cyclical. Like it means one thing today, it means a totally different thing to you tomorrow, and it's really in context with what's going on. But at that time, I mean, I grew up in an India where we all watched a lot of tennis, right? So the quote, he would constantly bring up, like, what's the difference between Pete Sampras and Leander Pace? And Pete Sampras was this in like top tennis player, and Leander Pace was top, but he was top in India. And the question he would ask us was meant to make us think about, what do you think is setting them apart? Because like, why is one at the top of their game globally and the other one isn't able to break it beyond a certain level? Both obviously very successful in their own way, but he'd always remind us that both of them have the same number of hours to practice. They both have the same tools, access to the same brand tennis rackets, tennis ball, courts. What's different? And he would keep reminding us that it wasn't how hard you worked. It wasn't anything but your mindset. If you believe you can do it, if you strongly, strongly think you can do something, you can do it. And I think that's where I wish I had taken that a little bit more seriously as an adult. Anytime I've been able to stay strong mentally and think, I got this, I've had so many difficult challenges and I've been able to get on the other side. Anytime I've been able to have that mindset and stick to it and just stay focused, no one can stop me. So yeah, that's the quote.
Yeah, and it all goes back to the mindset, having that type of mindset that makes you continually want to improve, as you said before in this beginning of this episode. So yeah, I think that's pretty much sums it up. So before we end off, would you like to say any last words to the audience?
Yeah, my last words, which has sort of been like on my mind, actually, I'm really impressed with what you're doing. You're obviously trying to be a better version of yourself at every given point. And that's really, really impressive to me. I hope that you'll never lose the spirit to be this way, because it is hard. It's a very, very hard journey to, even if you wanted to stay in tech or stay adjacent to tech or any career, right? Whatever pivots you might have personally or professionally, if you continue to have this energy level and this positivity and, eyes on the prize attitude, nothing can stop you. You shouldn't you shouldn't waste your time looking right or left. Just look straight. And I think you'll be great. I can't wait to see where where you'll be every year. I'm going to be following you, and I can't wait to see how your career windy slide takes you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Arna's News, where we aim to inspire and empower women in STEM by featuring the stories of successful female professionals in the industry. Today, we had the pleasure of hearing from Sukrutha Bhadouria, the Director of Engineering at Salesforce and also the CTO at Girl Geek X, who shared 3 valuable pieces of advice. 1, it's important to enjoy and have a positive attitude towards your studies or work. 2, it's okay to pivot and take risks in your career. And 3, expertise is not always a prerequisite for success. Thus, that concludes episode 46. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you are listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Dito, you're listening to Arna Sahu, the host of Arna's News. Toodles!